Hey there, fellow parents, cycle breakers, overthinkers, and veterans of emotional whiplash. Welcome back to Are You Fucking Kidding Me? A thoughtful parenting podcast. I'm your host, Clementine Lord, and we are diving head first into one of the heaviest, most human topics I have tackled to date. I wanted to change up the format a little bit, add some video for this topic, because I really want you all to see me. See my face and understand. Today, I'm really going to be talking about the gut-wrenching, sometimes paralyzing realization that you've accidentally, unintentionally, so lovingly exposed your kids to the same emotional trauma you swore you would never repeat. You know that moment when you say something in anger and you hear it bounce off the walls and suddenly it's not your voice, it's your mother's or your father's, or God forbid, that teacher who humiliated you in second grade. Or maybe it's the sound of your own childhood pain echoing through the living room. And you think, are you real right now? How did I get here? I read the books. I went to therapy. I followed the gentle parenting accounts. I even bought the organic fruit snacks. But here's the truth. Breaking cycles isn't clean or simple. It's messy, nonlinear, and often looks like failure right before it looks like growth. So today's episode isn't a how-to guide. I really won't be telling you how to fix it all or offering 5 easy steps to becoming the parent you always needed. If you're looking for that, I'd like to direct you to literally any influencer who has never been left alone with their child for more than 2 hours. They'll give you that. In this episode, it's all about truth. The hard, human, sticky truth of trying to protect your kids from pain you are still learning how to name. We're going to talk about the ghosts we bring into the nursery, the sharp edges we didn't even know we had, the moments of clarity that hurt like fucking hell. And most importantly, what we do after the damage is done. Because it will be done, and there will be damage. And that's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a very honest one. So pour yourself some coffee or wine. I'm not judging. And let's get real. All right, so let's talk about these ghosts. Not the fun Halloween kind. I mean the emotional poltergeists you didn't invite to your parenting, but who show up anyway. Total side note, that movie, The Poltergeist, still fucking scares the shit out of me, which is why I chose that word, because these are scary ghosts. They're the ghosts who show up anyway, unannounced, and usually during a tantrum in public, like Target. I'm talking about intergenerational trauma here, people. It's really the emotional debt your parents forgot to pay off that now shows up in your kid's credit report. It's still the subtle stuff. The flinch when your child cries too loudly because big emotions weren't safe in your house growing up. Or the knot in your stomach when they express anger because you learned anger meant danger. It's saying, you're fine, automatically when they're clearly not fine because that's what was said to you every time you needed comfort. It's saying sorry to every assertive tone out of someone's mouth, be it adult or child, because the guilt and shame are so ingrained in your DNA. And you don't need to have survived some dramatic movie-worthy trauma for this to be real. When people hear the word trauma, they so often think of these big, obvious events, abuse, abandonment, something dramatic. But some of the deepest wounds come from what didn't happen. Maybe no one hit you. You probably were fed, clothed, had a roof over your head, and even got great grades. But if no one ever really saw you, like emotionally saw you, that's trauma. If you were expected to keep it together, to be the achiever, the helper, the easy one, that's trauma. If your feelings were ignored, minimized, or treated like they were too much, too dramatic, or too inconvenient, yeah, that's trauma too. It's the chronic sense of being alone with your emotions. The message that your needs were a burden, that your love had to be earned, not just given freely, that who you were wasn't quite enough unless you were performing, pleasing, fixing, and even shrinking. That's not always loud. It's not always violent, but man, it's deeply shaping. And now here we are, raising these kids while carrying out those quiet injuries. Wondering why we panic when our child has a need that we weren't allowed to have. Wondering why their anger makes us flinch and why their sadness feels so fucking overwhelming. It's not because we're bad parents. It's because those parts of us were never loved out loud. So now we have to learn how, in real time, while also feeding them dinner and searching for the matching socks and the missing homework. No pressure, right? Seriously, when people say things like, I turned out fine, I want to ask them to define fine. Because some of us turned out functional, sure, but we flinch when other people raise their voices, or we over apologize, or we panic when we're not being productive, or like me, we people please until we forget what the fuck it is we even want. Is that really fine? Or is it just familiar? I have a saying with a young man that's in my life that just because something is normal doesn't mean it's healthy. It's the same thing for familiarity. So here's a personal example, because God knows I wouldn't drag all of us into this fire pit if I wasn't willing to go first. Some of you know, and some of you don't, that I was the oldest child of parents who struggled with addiction, drugs, alcohol, the whole chaotic cocktail. And I was 5 years older than my sister, which meant I wasn't just the big sibling. I was a third parent, a referee, a tiny adult holding up the emotional scaffolding of our house. When my sister was born, people would ask me, what are you most excited about? And I would say, now I have someone to boss, boss, boss. And that's because that's what I thought my role was. That all said, my parents were and are in many ways brilliant people. They taught me to read, write, and tie my shoes before I even could enter kindergarten or reach the kitchen counter. They spoke to me like I was a peer, not a kid, and there was this sharpness, this intellect, and intensity to everything. But there also was yelling, a lot of it. Mornings with my mom were like battlegrounds. I still remember the thud of hairbrushes hitting the walls. Not metaphorically, like actual brushes being thrown across the room as we shouted over one another. That was our language. That's how you got heard. Not by speaking clearly or gently, but by getting loud, by forcing space for your voice in a room that was already filled with noise. So what do you think happens now when my own kids ignore me? I don't breathe. I don't ground myself. I fucking yell. I hit walls, I slam doors, because somewhere deep in my nervous system, that's still the language I know best. It's not that I want a parent like this. It's that my brain perceives disconnection when I feel dismissed or invisible, and it flashes back to old patterns. It says, get louder or disappear. And here's the part that's really hard to admit. Yelling to me still feels like proof that I care, because silence was abandonment. So I rage. And then I collapse into shame afterwards, wondering if I've just repeated the very chaos I grew up drowning in. This is the cycle. Not because I don't love my kids, but because love alone does not erase our fucking blueprint. And sometimes trying so hard to do it differently means I swing too far in the other direction. I over-explain, I over-validate, trying to create a perfectly emotionally safe space, which doesn't exist when you're yelling like a banshee 5 minutes earlier. We don't just parent how we want to, we parent how we were wired. And unless we actively work on rewiring, we let the ghosts drive. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking to you right now, because the ghosts aren't in charge anymore. I am. You are. Even if we have to remind ourselves every goddamn day. Here's what no one tells you when you start parenting with awareness. Healing is really disorienting. It's not a straight line. It's a damn spiral. You'll think you're over it, and then boom, your kid screams at you in public, and suddenly you're 6 years old again, crying in your bedroom, wishing someone would just understand you. But awareness is the first weapon. If you can see the ghost, you can start talking back to it. You can ask, is this mine or is this inherited? You can pause and you can choose differently. Not perfectly, not always, but always intentionally. And that's a beginning. It's somewhere to start. So let's talk about that moment, the one where the floor drops out from under you, the one that stops you cold in your tracks and forced you to face the fact that despite your best efforts, you're not just breaking the cycle, you are full on in it. For me, it can come on a regular morning. You know the kind where no one can find their shoes, the lunch boxes are still in the sink from yesterday, and somehow everyone's emotions are turned up to an 11.5 all before 8 a.m. I can think of this one time where my child was ignoring me, like flat out tuning me out while I was trying to get them ready for school. And I felt it. This fire raise in my chest, that old familiar rage, the one that doesn't actually start with them, but with the years I spent not being heard, the years I screamed to be visible. And without thinking, without breathing, I just yelled loud. I slammed the wall, I shut the cabinet, and I made a scene. And in the echo of my outburst, I saw it. I saw the look on my child's face, the way their body tensed, the way their shoulders folded in like they were trying to disappear, and the fear was real. And suddenly I wasn't in my kitchen anymore. I was in my childhood bathroom, 10 years old, crying in the mirror, wondering why being me was so hard to manage for the adults around me. And that's when it hit me. I had just become the storm I spent my whole childhood trying to weather. It was like all my therapy sessions came rushing to the surface all at once. All those, I will never do that. Those promises broken, not out of malice, not out of failure, but because trauma doesn't ask for our permission. It just fucking shows up, especially when we're stressed, tired, stretched thin, and emotionally maxed out. And that's the part no one prepares you for when you try to parent consciously. They tell you to be gentle, to be attuned, but they don't always tell you what it feels like when your nervous system betrays you, when your body remembers patterns your heart has already outgrown. And in that moment, it fucking sucked. But it was also sacred. I know that's a weird word, but it was honest. It showed me what still needed healing, not for my kid's sake, but for mine. You can't fix what you won't face. And I had to face the fact that no amount of love, no amount of attention, no stack of parenting books would matter if I didn't learn how to sit with that part of me, the hurt kid inside the grown-up yelling over a hairbrush. So what do you do when you see yourself clearly like that? When the mask falls down and you look in the mirror and what looks back is loud, you don't run. You pause. You breathe. And you decide, this ends with me. Not because you're perfect. God knows I'm not perfect. But because you're awake. And once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. That's the beginning of change. It's not clean. It's not instant, but real. And here's the part that totally stops me in my tracks. Another personal part of my life. I've got a teenager, a high schooler. I have 3 years until they're packing bags, leaving my house, and stepping into the world. And every time I picture that, I get hit with this wave of fear. What if I haven't fixed my shit in time? What if all they take with them is the worst version of me? Because we've had our moments, the blow-ups, the tension, the aftermath, but my teen, they don't fight back. They don't throw words or raise their voice. They just shut down. They go quiet. They internalize, and they look at me with this expression that isn't anger. It's distance. Like they've already made the decision that expressing themselves is not worth it. That silence is safer. And holy shit, that shakes me. Because that is so not me. I've never been quiet. I have been loud my whole damn life. I was the kid who yelled On the playground, in the classroom, I talked above a whisper. I threw brushes. I demanded to be heard because it was the only way I was heard. Yelling was survival, and volume was my presence. Now, my husband, he's the quiet one. He's the internal processor, the one who retreats, who keeps the peace by keeping things inside. And now I see that same silence in our teen, and it scares me. Not because it reminds me of myself, but because it doesn't. And that makes me feel really disconnected from him. Because when my kid shuts down, I don't know how to reach them. I don't know how to meet them in the quiet. My instincts say push, question, demand connection, and their instincts say retreat, shut the door, say nothing. And I worry. I worry that what I see as ignoring is actually self-protection. That my own intensity, my need to be heard, is the very thing that's taught him to go quiet. There are moments when I watch them walk away and I think, have I become the storm that they're learning to weather? Man, that's a terrifying realization. Not because I yelled, but because I might have taught them that being themselves isn't safe around me, that their feelings should stay inside, and that conflict means emotional withdrawal. God, I hate that. Because I do not want them to yell back, but I want to know them. I want them to feel safe enough to say what's real, even when it's messy and even when it's about me. But they're learning to survive in a home where emotions have volume. And right now, their survival looks like silence. So what do? I stop trying to fix it in the moment. I stop demanding words and start offering space. I apologize more. I leave the door open longer. And I work harder at listening without reacting. Because parenting a quiet teen when you are a loud, emotionally messy human is not intuitive. It's just not for me, but it's possible, and I'm learning slowly, clumsily. And I hope, God, I hope that even if they don't say it now, they'll feel it someday, that they'll know that I didn't give up, that I kept reaching, that I tried to change because they mattered more than my instinct to win. God, I hope they realize that. I know this has all been really powerful, and I want to take a breath, a real one, not the kind they tell you to do on Instagram while a toddler is using yogurt as hair gel. I mean, just inhale. Because I want to say something that may sound obvious, but is worth repeating out loud. Healing is not a goddamn checklist. It's not read the book, light the candle, do the breath work, say the affirmation, break the cycle. Check. I tried that. I really did. I had the journal, the prompts, the late night meditations with somebody whispering about my inner child while I laid there thinking about whether my kids did their homework. I wrote out my triggers, named my patterns, said I was done yelling, declared myself an emotionally regulated goddess. And then one of my kids spilled an entire bottle of hand sanitizer in the bathroom on a Tuesday while I was running late. And suddenly I wasn't a goddess. I was my mother in full meltdown mode, channeling every loud generational ghost in my fucking bloodline. And here's the thing. You don't heal on paper. You heal in the moment, in the pause between your child's refusal and your reaction, in the time it takes to clench your fists instead of slamming the door, in the apology that comes 5 minutes after the yelling because you finally saw it happen in real time and chose not to pretend that it didn't happen. And sometimes you don't pause. You'll explode. You'll fall back into those same familiar chaos patterns, and the shame will hit hard because you know better. You did the work. You highlighted the book, for God's sakes. You knew better. But knowing doesn't always mean doing. Not yet. And that's okay. Healing is repetition. It's showing up again and again and again, not because you're getting it all right, but because you're trying. It's not sexy. It's not linear. It's not even Instagrammable. But God, it's real. And that matters more than 1,000 mindfulness reels. So wherever you are, driving, walking, hiding in the bathroom with your phone, please just pause for a second. And if it's safe, close your eyes. Take a deep breath through your nose. Now let it go audibly if you need to. I won't judge. Honestly, sighing is half my emotional regulation toolkit these days. And I honestly want you to say this to yourself, quietly, even if you don't believe it yet. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. I want you to say it again like you mean it this time. I am doing the best I can with what I've got. Because here's the truth. Healing doesn't look like perfection. It looks like coming back to yourself. It looks like forgiveness. It looks like staying in the room even after you've slammed the door. If you're still here, thank you. If you're still listening, still showing up, that already means something. So let's talk about repair. Not the romanticized kind you see in parenting books with scripts like, I feel upset when you throw your broccoli. Please make a different choice next time. No, I'm talking about the real, raw kind. Although I feel statements are super important in communicating to all humans, the repair that comes after you were the one that lost it, that's what I'm talking about. After you slam the door, slam the cabinet, after you said something that made your child's face change, after the silence set in. The truth is, you're going to mess up. You already have. So have I 1,000 times. No one gets to parenting clean. But repair is where the magic lives. It's the bridge back to connection. And it starts with you, not your kid. That's the hard part. Because the impulse to either explain it away, oh, I was just stressed, or you weren't listening, or pretend it didn't happen. But silence teaches nothing except shame. And defensiveness teaches our kids to doubt their own feelings. So what do? I go back. Sometimes 5 minutes later, sometimes an hour, sometimes, if I'm honest, it takes me until bedtime or the next morning on the drive to school because I have to sit with my own shit first. And then I say something like, I'm sorry I yelled. That wasn't about you. That was my reaction, and I don't want to do that. I know it probably scared you, and I so want to do better. And here's the thing, your kid may not say anything, especially if they're like mine and they tend to shut down. They might just nod or shrug or say, it's fine. That doesn't mean they didn't hear you. It means they're watching to see if your apology means something, to see if it leads to action and change. So when I say that, I try to back it up. Again, not perfectly. I still snap, I still yell, but I also name it. I say things like, that wasn't how I wanted to handle that, even when I'm still annoyed, because repair isn't about absolution, it's about accountability. It's about showing my kids that big feelings are allowed and that mine don't have to dominate the room, that my kids are not responsible for managing my emotional landscape, that I'm a safe place, not just when things are calm, but especially when they're messy. I also try to ask questions and not to fish for forgiveness, but to stay in dialogue. I don't expect you to have answers right now, but if there's anything you want me to understand better, I'm open and I'm here for you. Those are things I say to my kids. Sometimes they say no. A lot of times they shrug, but I'm showing them it's okay to speak. I'm inviting their truth, and I'm letting them know that love does not require silence. And here's what I hold on to. On the hard days, repair builds trust in a way perfection never could. When my kid sees me admit my flaws and still stay, still show up and keep trying, that's where safety starts. That's where cycles start to bend. And I don't get this right all the time. I still hate how some days end. I still whisper apologies over sleeping teenagers and cry in the laundry room because I wish I could rewind the whole day. Sometimes I wish I could rewind the whole fucking decade. But repair means tomorrow is still on the table. It means the story isn't over, and slowly I'm becoming the parent my kids need too. Here we are. We've dug through the guilt, the yelling, the shutting down, the bone deep fear that we've already screwed it all up. And then we get to land in something softer. Not simpler, but real and softer. We land in hope. I'm talking about the quiet kind of hope, the kind that whispers, this isn't over yet. The kind that lives in your next apology, your next choice to pause, the next time you walk into your kid's room after a hard moment and just say, I'm still here. I'm sorry. Here's the thing I have come to believe and know. Breaking cycles doesn't mean raising perfect kids. It doesn't mean never yelling. It doesn't mean being calm 100% of the time while drinking chamomile tea and channeling Mr. Rogers. It means choosing not to run from the mess. And God knows I want to run from the mess I created. It means staying in the relationship even when it's hard, even when it's tense, even when your instinct is to retreat or over-explain or make it all about you. It means letting your kid have their truth, even when it hurts to hear or goes against all the rules you said you were going to have. And yeah, it's lonely. It's really lonely being the one who turns around and says, this ends with me. It's lonely and hard work because you're not parenting with a model. You're parenting against one. And some days it feels like you're walking uphill barefoot, holding a backpack full of your own childhood shit. But there is power in that too, because our kids will have a different story. Again, not perfect. I keep saying that, but I mean it. Not perfect, but different. They'll have a parent who owned their mess just as I have a parent now who has said sorry. Just as I have parents now who did the work and who kept showing up. That's what matters. Even if it's quiet, even if it takes years for them to name it. If you're sitting here thinking, I don't know if I'm doing this right, you probably are. Because people who don't care, they don't ask that question. So yeah, this is the work. Not in theory, but in the messy, heartbreaking, occasionally hopeful reality of parenting while healing yourself. We carry so much. Stories that aren't even ours. Instincts wired for survival. Voices we swore we would never echo. And still we love. We try and we repair. Our parents, they didn't set out to hurt us. They were working with what they had. Some of it was beautiful, some of it broken. And maybe they never had the space, the tools, the language to name what we're naming now. But we do. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, or the next time you're laying in bed rehashing the moment that went sideways that day, I want you to try this. Put your hand over your chest. Feel your heartbeat and say out loud if you can, my parents did their best, and I'm doing my best. Let that land, not as an excuse, not as a permission slip, but as a truth. Because you are doing your best, and it is enough. If this episode hit home, if it cracked something open or soothed something sore, please share it. Text it to a friend who's also trying to parent with a history. Post it on social media, or just sit with it. You don't have to do this work loudly for it to matter. Feel free to DM me, leave a review, message me on the website, or just keep showing up in 2 weeks when we dig into whatever fresh hell parenting throws my way. And until then, stay honest and keep trying. Remember, the cycle may be long, but it bends towards healing, especially when you're brave enough to keep walking.